HannahMouse1 here. For those who don't know me, I'm an aspiring game dev working to prove that professional quality games can be made using beginner-friendly software such as Scratch. My main project, A Farmer's Life, is a top-down 2D farming simulator game inspired by Stardew Valley. Today, I'll be continuing to work on the cutscenes by adding in the art to display the speaking character and their emotions. You might have seen this sort of thing in games such as Stardew, and it really helps bring the characters to life. I used the character art from how each NPC appears in the shop as a base and edited it to A, have them standing if their original pose was different, and B, clearly display an emotion on their faces. I started with Vessa, the shopkeeper, whose pose needed to be altered as she was originally leaning against a countertop. Outside of her neutral pose, I gave her 6 expressions: happy, embarrassed, shocked, crying, and angry. Next, I moved on to Derek, the scientist. He was already standing, but I did have to extend his body downward to account for the fact that he's no longer behind a work desk. He required a few extra iterations, some versions that have him wearing goggles and others that don't, and I had to create specific poses for moments like telling the player to stop or pushing the goggles off of his face. Posing Andy, the builder, was more challenging. His base art had his torso at a 3/4 angle, but for this I wanted him facing straight on. His expressions were much simpler though, he just needed an extra one for when he's taking a nap. Mia, the blacksmith, was very straightforward. She was already standing, I just had to remove the tools she was holding and the anvil in front of her. Her expressions were especially fun to do. Her bright red lips and the whites of her eyes really popped against her skin, making it easy to convey strong emotions. Then came Bridget, the elderly barn owner. I didn't have to change her pose at all. She was already just standing with nothing in front of her. I deliberately kept her expressions muted to reflect her age and her reserved personality. On the opposite end of the spectrum is Felix, the fisherman's son. I changed his pose from sitting to standing and took the opposite approach to his expressions. Instead of being mature and understated, everything is dialed up to 11. When he's happy, he's ecstatic. When he cries, it's waterfalls. As the only child NPC, I wanted his emotions to genuinely feel childlike and unfiltered. For Santi the tailor, I removed the sewing machine and table from his image. I also created an additional pose for a specific scene where he's rehearsing Shakespeare. Sasha, Santi's sister and the furniture store owner, was probably the simplest character to work on. Her pose was already usable as is, and I kept her emotional range minimal as I want her to feel a bit more closed off compared to the others. And finally, Gitano, the restaurateur. The only real challenge with him was figuring out how the injured side of his face would move in comparison to the unscarred side. He's missing an eyeball and has significant scarring. Aside from that, he was fairly straightforward. After that, I moved on to creating some supplementary characters to support the main cast storylines. I won't go into too much detail here to avoid spoilers, but they include Estelle, Bessa's grandmother, the Doctor, who appears across multiple storylines but features most predominantly in Bessa and Derek's arcs, Candice, Andy's wife, who's holding their as of yet unnamed baby daughter, Justin, Andy and Candice's son, and also Mia's boyfriend. These were originally going to be 2 separate characters, but I merged them to streamline the cast and deepen the player interaction. There's Amber, Felix's mother, Roland, Felix's father and owner of the fishing hut, and finally Sophia, Gitano's wife and co-owner/server at their restaurant. With the arc complete for each character, I implemented the system that displays the speaking character's portrait during dialogue and allows each line to be tagged with an emotion so that the correct expression is shown. I then went through all the existing cutscenes and added the necessary tags to each line of dialogue. But that's all I got done for this week, so thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you did. It lets me know that this is something that you'd want to see more of. Join the Discord, link down below, and I'll see you next week with another video. Bye!